Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Phoenix, Arizona, it's time for Phoenix Business Radio, spotlighting the city's best businesses and the people who lead them.
Hello and welcome to Phoenix Business Radio, broadcasting live from the Max 6 Entrepreneurial Work Center right here in Tempe, Arizona, where we help build businesses and connect you with the right people. And not far from us is the ASU campus, at least the main campus. We have several ASU campuses here and, of course, in many different places of the country. Today, we are fortunate enough to get to connect with George Basile. He's a professor with the School of Sustainability and Sustainability and Enterprise. Welcome, George.
Thanks. Great to be here, Karen.
Likewise. And you're a transplant to Arizona.
I am. I'm native to California, and really enjoying it here. Of course, I've actually been here teaching at ASU for over a decade, so I can't say that I'm now bistatal.
Is that what they call it? Bi-coastal. Well, we don't have the coast, but bistatal. That'll work.
And it'll be fun. It'll be fun when we talk today. There's really, as we all know, very different cultures between the two states.
Yes.
A lot of shared business, and quite frankly, a lot of shared goals and objectives. Well, so there's a lot of differences, but there are a lot of similarities. So it'll be. I'll try and bring it in as we go.
And we literally just met maybe 10 minutes before we just got the show going on air. And already I'm fascinated by your wisdom around just our landscape here in Arizona and just some of the little bits of wisdom. So I have no doubt this is going to be a great conversation.
Yeah, it's a little weird being a biophysicist turned business guy.
Right.
So I have some interesting perspectives that are
bring them in today's conversation. And with us as well today, we have the founder of Growth Leaders Network, Hylke Faber. Said that correctly?
Yes, perfect.
Very good.
Nice
I don't always do that. Very great to have you with us as well. And how did you come to be part of this conversation? We have Ryan to thank for us. And Ryan is with the School of Sustainability.
Yep. He's part of our profession. Yep. He's part of our professional education, lifelong learning programs, and an all-around terrific soul.
He really is. And I was hoping I'd get to see him today, but he's got another commitment. So how did it come to be that he thought the two of you needed to be here to share with the world what you're up to?
Well, it's a long story. I'll try to do this.
We have plenty of time.
Yeah, we do. I'll do the short one. So I have been working on consciousness in organizations for about 15 years. I was a monk almost before that. And before that, I was a strategy consultant, and I'm from the Netherlands originally. So I've been traveling in my world for a long time, looking for what's true. And so I've been working on this consciousness in organizations, in businesses for decades now. And now I'm almost 50, and I look around. I love nature, and I find myself out in the mountains often, and I just see nature deteriorating and the climate changing. And so there was at some point 2 years ago, I was sitting at my desk now in Phoenix, Arizona, and I was like, Hylke, you help people get more wisdom and compassion, but often selling more widgets. And we don't need more widgets. We need to do something to help this phenomenal challenge. And people have so much potential to do something about this. So that's just why I was like, okay, we got to do something. So what can I do? Well, my amygdala little brain says, yeah, there's nothing you can do, or you're going to solve this, right?
Sometimes we land somewhere in between, right?
Right.
The extremes. Like, no, that's not it. I've been learning about the value of community. I live in Phoenix, Arizona. Let me look around. And I did the same thing that I did when I was in New York City. And I was like, there's other people here who are interested in consciousness. Columbia Business School. So I started a program with them. Similarly, I thought, we have ASU here. Turns out they have a school for sustainability. And I was on the floor crying, literally. It's like, I'm so happy that people have put their wisdom, their time, and their attention, and their resources where their mouth is.
And just so you guys know, all of our students feel like that. They're just crying on the floor. They're so happy.
I believe that. Sometimes they're crying for other reasons.
Yeah, well,
Explain consciousness to us from the world that you live in. I have my own definition for it. I have a sense that it's going to be extremely similar. But for our listeners who this might be new or they're coming to it from their own vein, how would you describe your life as you've pursued this idea around consciousness?
For me, the simplest way I can say it is it's the inquiry into what is true. What is true? And And with that comes great humility because you can't really say it, which doesn't mean you can't study it. You can't say it, but you can't study it. You can say, what is true? What is true right here about me being in this moment? Like, what is the best of me? And also, what's not the best of me? And start to navigate into the depths of ourselves so that, it manifests like, I'm feeling taller. Or like right now, Karen, with you, I'm feeling more connected. Or with you, George, I'm feeling this like, wow, we've been on this journey forever. It seems like, even though it's 2 years almost now, in developing this. So it's like this study of what is true.
Pretty cool, huh?
So cool. And I'm a shadow integration coach and a trauma guide, as well as a Tao guide. And I always say to folks, I work with executive leaders and business owners, and I always say the work begins inside, right? We are the microcosm of the macrocosm, and it's a mind, body, soul connectivity. And once we can have a handle on being the witness to ourselves, then we can be a greater witness to what's going on around us and how to interact. So we're speaking the same language.
Well, and it's been a thing that's missing from this sort of broad field of sustainability. So if sustainability is a real simple, right? It's do today in such a way that all of us, including our kids and future generations, can keep doing tomorrow. Or you can stick thrive today in such a way that all of us and future generations can also thrive tomorrow. So it's investing in the now for ourselves, but investing in the now in such a way that it actually builds success and opportunity, for our kids and our grandkids and the people we care about and communities around the world, right? So it's also a global thought. And so there you go. Everybody nods their head. Absolutely.
Yeah.
What's one of the things that's been missing from the field, right? Because a lot of the way you hear about this is, our big problems, climate change, global inequity, around Phoenix, we hear about water, right? And we feel it. We feel urban heat, like it's hotter and hotter. So that's how it's often brought to us as a set of problems and a set of facts. Like the IPCC just came out with a big report this week that's frankly kind of all bad news. And that is not empowering. So what's been missing from this field is what you guys were just talking about. What's been missing from this field is the people part. At the end of the day, sustainability is about people. At the end of the day, sustainability is about better decisions. It's about what we do. It's about reflecting on ourselves and it's about how we have fun, a journey in the world. And that hasn't, stories, and that hasn't been brought into the fold. And that also then wraps it all the way around to, of course, it's about business. Because business is where the rubber meets the road. It's where our decisions turn into action and where our actions get multiplied by people coming together to do. So you can see that the combination, it becomes really interesting when you make the triangle of build today for tomorrow too. So sustainability plus business, right? Let's do today, plus consciousness and knowing yourself. How do I empower myself within that narrative to have a great life, right? And to really succeed, right? While I work sort of with people and planet, which may sound, I don't know, either kind of corny, but you know what? Again, it's super fun and it's what you want to do. And everybody nods their head and it would work with your kindergarten self. Your kindergarten self would love that, right? So
it makes so much sense.
Yeah, I met Hylke, right, through Ryan and all, and was like, finally, we can bring these fields together in a very pragmatic way. So really exciting.
So behind Hylke is our Step and Repeat banner. And you may have noticed, I know George couldn't see it, but Conscious Capitalism of Arizona, this is the home for that. And the Conscious Capitalism is an international movement, which I'm sure you're both familiar with. I think Ryan and I, even when we first had him on with us a couple of years ago, we talked about that connection. And this idea that we can find a way to create a win-win for everybody, the stakeholders, the community, the vendors, again, speaking from a business lens, and how do we create sustainability, not just for our business and our communities, but also how do we take care of our earth as we take care of each other. So yes, again, we are a collective conscious, and I'm pleased to hear that there's more and more alignment, and that you are trusting your instinct to say, who should I play with now is how I'll sum up what you said. And there was Arizona right underneath your nose. Fantastic. So can you tell us a little bit about your business and then specifically, again, what the work that you're doing with the School of Sustainability?
Yeah, so I'll start with the work that I'm doing together with George because I'm feeling a little bit like a kid, that kindergartner with the innocent eyes, like, oh, business, climate change, sustainability, and consciousness. Ooh, what's going to happen? Like that's amazing, right? That deep innocence, and that is part of the driving force that I find on my good days within myself. Yeah. So my work until about 2 years ago, and still is I call it taming your crocodiles. So it's very familiar, I think, related to what you're doing, I think, Karen, right? Which is it's about helping business leaders and other leaders become aware of what are the forces that hold us back. That sounds very sort of mythical, but can be very practical. What are the thoughts that I have on a given day that have me not show up as this fierce, innocent kindergartner who has like all this power and wisdom and creativity and compassion and just connected, who doesn't know about boundaries and pull out and more, and this insufficiency that we seem to have taught each other over the thousands of years, connecting that to the wisdom of the wisdom teachers, the Tao, the Christ, whatever wisdom teacher comes in, and then helping business people to access that in their day to day. So how can you have a meeting about how to engage the engineering department if you're in marketing, where you bring the highest consciousness? How do you create a culture in an organization where people know that the way we do things around here is coming from a highly conscious place, and we are compassionate with ourselves when we fall back, and we're supportive to each other? That's the work that I've been doing with myself and with my colleagues in Seattle and also in the Netherlands. So, yeah.
Hmm. And the Climate Conscious Leader course, tell us about that.
So it was an idea. There's another Ryan here, Ryan Johnson. We have two Ryans, Ryan Morris, Ryan Johnson, and then George and I and some other people. We got around and we said, okay, so how do we create a course or something? Let's start with course. Already sounds grandiose. Something that brings people together from a place of where the power is. And right now, a lot of the power in our earth and our world is concentrated in businesses. And whether we like it or not, businesses have a lot of the power. Governments do too.
They're actually, I think businesses are about 50% of the world's largest economy are actually businesses. Like Apple has a value that's bigger than a lot of gross domestic products of various nations. Mm-hmm. So it's a new era for people that we've built these economic engines that are global in scale and are so large. So this is a new thing for us, right?
Mm-hmm. So it's like how to unleash the power of business to address one of the biggest, or maybe the biggest challenge of our generation. That's what this course is about, where we help business leaders to stay away from the extremes of like, I'm going to solve this tomorrow, to there's nothing I can do, but find the middle way. It's like, okay, yes, I may be working in a marketing department in this technology company, and I have a mortgage, and I have retirement ideas and all kinds of financial things that I'm worried about. What can I do in the middle of that and still contribute to this thing that we're in?
Yeah, and maybe even sort of go beyond that in the sense of, again, right now, a lot of this stuff is brought in as what you can't do, right? You can't do this, you can't do that, or problems, a lack of opportunity. And I prefer to think of sustainability as a success platform. How do I do what Hylke was saying? How do I do what I want to do? How does the business execute on what it wants to execute on using sustainability as a platform? And that might then change my vision too. And when you think of it that way, it's about making better decisions. So if I say to you, okay, wow, we got this climate thing and it's really gnarly and, or whatever okay, it's Wednesday, and I'm like, okay, well, you got to fix it by Friday, go. That's just a deal killer. Whereas if I say, well, let's work a little bit together, and this is what the course is about, let's work a little bit together and figure out how to help you make better decisions that take you towards sustainable success, utilizing your tools, your business, your networks, your value system, right? Your aspirations. So it's really about making better decisions within that. that's something we're good at. That's something we can do Monday morning,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then if you do it all together, and again, you might say, well, that's not going to make a big difference. But that's exactly what's developing the world we're in. It's a bunch of people making decisions, implementing actions on those decisions, scaling them up in these businesses, and having whatever positives and negatives impact. So that actually, at the end of the day, when it comes to engaging with people and planet, the only thing you can do is make better decisions and then take actions on that. So I think the idea here is to be a sort of pragmatic optimism, right? It's optimism through action. It's humility plus action, right?
Yep.
So there's a big action component. And I think that's what comes together here.
And in that, I keep hearing the word accountability. In that, we can create a sense of accountability as a community and as individuals and business owners, whether it's small business or enterprise, because there's that education component and helping people make that shift to honest business practices, sustainable business practices, all of that because of the ultimately the truth that's underneath everything that we do.
Well, yeah, and we've really been given a dose of the fragility of our system, right? I mean, holy smokes, we've had COVID, right? I mean, we have the horrible things that are going on in the Ukraine.
Yep.
So we've all seen that what appears to be, so if you were sitting on the sofa and you're like going, good, it's all sewn up. It's 1,000 generations of stability from here on out. Well, okay, that turned out not to be true. We're like, wow, right? I have a daughter and son who are sort of entering the workforce, and it's a very different universe than when I was a kid.
Right.
In some ways it's very similar. But for them, they're like, where is the stability? How do I navigate this? What can I count on, right? And so I think the businesses are also in that new universe.
Yep.
And again, on the negative side, it's like, that's actually scary, right? I mean, especially, businesses are real things that generate real payrolls, that pay people real wages, that support real lives. So this is that scariness is real. On the flip side, we all know as business or enterprise people, whether it's for-profit, nonprofit, people who do things, you can also lean into that and ask, all right, where am I accountable? Where do I take responsibility? And therefore, what am I empowered to do? Which, of course, always makes you feel better, right? When you take that action.
Almost instantly, at least that's been my
It's like,
experience.
bang, right.
Right. And so to think about that accountability, to me, it's also like becoming accountable for the potential that we are. So if I inquire into the potential that I am, I find infinite potential. That's not meant to be a frou-frou or soft statement. That's meant to be also a very hardcore statement. We see this right now in the people on Russia and Ukraine. I mean, they are taking tremendous risks of their lives. I heard this boxer in Kiev speaking. Maybe you heard that. I heard it on Dutch TV. And he said, he was asked, are you afraid? He said, no. He said, my soul belongs to God and my body and mind belong to Ukraine. Right? So he has gone on his own journey to figure out more of his potential. Now, whether these words mean anything to you or rest, that doesn't matter. But he was connected to something, and he is connected to something that allows him to be where he's at.
Versus the contrary to that would be what? If someone says, are you afraid? I can't breathe. I can't sleep. I can't function.
Right.
I'm hunkering down. I'm retreating. I'm isolated, right? So
it's a disconnection.
It's a disconnect from ourselves, from our internal world, from, again, community. And again, that's where we risk great danger. It's why we are in some of the situations that we're in.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have to share, because everything that we're talking about is all of the reasons why I even opened Business RadioX 4.5 years ago. I, having been a coach for years, and again, around the mind, body, soul connection, I was working with more politicians and attorneys and doctors, and really loved helping make a difference for the folks who tend to be leaders with a large constituency. And because if we can, again, change the hearts and the minds, or help guide leaders to a place that's beneficial for all of us, then we all win. But what I found was happening was, even though I set the stage in the beginning of our relationship to say, we're as long as we do a great job for each other, I would love a referral to have you, whoever is facing the similar issues, that you send them my way. And this particular group of clients weren't necessarily doing that very confidently or comfortably. And yet I was the first one they text and said, thank you. I heard you talking to me when I, had this conversation, whatever. I'm sure you've experienced the same thing. And so I went to my coach and I said, I know I have a place to help bring, I'll use your word, it's not the word I use, but consciousness to our business community here in Phoenix. And I'm not sure how to do that. And that's when she suggested starting a podcast. And I thought, I don't want a podcast where I get behind the mic and talk about things. I'm not good with rehearsed stuff. I can do this much better. And, but then I found Business RadioX, and I'm now, of course, a licensed partner, because it's around sharing stories and having conversations that matter, in the way that Daryl teed it up for us, just, to have this. So when you talk about, sometimes, people feel like what you do is kind of woo-woo. You kind of even alluded to it, where it's a little out there. The reality is it's not at all. And if we can continue to align ourselves with universities and large enterprises and the nonprofits, and really help people become more human, but also, I'll use the word, more divine or more soulful, then we really have some potential to leave the world in an incredible place for our kids. So thank you both for being here, because it is why I started Business RadioX, and Daryl, our producer, and I are talking about that stuff all the time.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yes.
But I see it. So the other big group that I deal with, of course, over at ASU in the School of Sustainability and the College of Global Futures, are students, and of all ages, right? So we have a big undergraduate group, which are, sort of 18 to 25 or something. Then we have master's students coming in and mid-career professionals. And I've had, executives from banks, and a lot of our graduates go off and become these change makers. And to your point, it's not so much getting the word out. It's really getting out new perspectives and new knowledge, and opening up people to a bigger sort of vision and opportunity space. So, for example, our current enterprise model, the current business model, is actually built off of sort of viewing the world as a resource that you extract. You cut down trees or take out minerals, then you transform them through labor into products, and then you sell them, and then you repeat. And in that model, a tree doesn't have any inherent value till you transform it. Now, we all know trees have lots of inherent value, including actually, producing a lot of oxygen, right? But they also circulate water. They build topsoil. They're beautiful. We climb them, right? To this day, one of the most poetic moments of my life is always spring, and I start to see the blossoms on the trees, right? It's literally poetry, right? And our students are all embedded in that older story. And of course, the newer story is actually that our businesses are embedded in society, which is embedded in nature. And nature has lots of inherent value, right? Again, creating water, pure water, oxygen, storing. Like, we think of fossil fuels as something we just use, but that's actually a stored pile of carbon that isn't, in this case, impacting the atmosphere. So what I see our students go through is this transformation of getting new perspectives, right? New perspectives around sustainability, new perspectives around business. So you take that new perspective and you add to it permission. You say to them, like, go ahead, go forth, be creative, go. Yes, you have, and resources, right? Like a school, or if you're at a business and so. So you take that new perspective and you take permission, which is a combination of sure and some resources. And they just then bring their creativity to bear, which they walk in the room with. And you know what happens? Magic, innovation happens, right? Sustainability innovation happens, right? And then, to your point, if you wrap that in communication, whether it's Radio X and a podcast, whether it's teaching, whether it's your business being out in the community, like local Arizona, and being a community business, you take that creativity and that innovation and you effectively multiply it. And that, to me, is what's so exciting. All of our businesses in general are run by actually a relatively small number of people. Like, each individual, even if it's huge, you still got a small number of people making big decisions. If those people start to make different decisions, right? I've always said, once a business decides to do something, you duck, get out of the way. It's going to run you over. So I see that sort of multiplier effect starting. I see it all the time in my students, and then I see what they go do, and then I see that cascade. So that for me, I'm lucky. I have this well of optimism because I get to see that all the time. And that's something that, I wish I could just bottle that and share it.
But you are.
Yeah,
I mean,
right?
in
Here
a
we are,
sense,
right?
that is what you're doing, right?
Right. Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So is this leadership program then something, the Climate Conscious Leader course, and we're just using that word because it fits a little bit anyway,
It's alliterative.
right? But is that in the, you all have collectively created it and you're bringing it to the School of Sustainability?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yes. So we've been creating it. It starts at the end of May, our first run. And we're going to be together with a cohort of leaders from business. And we're going to explore this crucible of, okay, you are a business leader. Okay, you have consciousness. Okay, you live in a place where we have sustainability challenge. Okay, we have lots of history. What do we do? And we start to explore very specifically this idea of, well, what are the stories that we have told ourselves? Which stories are helping us? And which stories are getting in the way? And so, some of our stories are, there's nothing I can do, or I have to solve this tomorrow, or this is too difficult, or nothing is going to change, or any of those, or that are just, things that we have made up in our minds to make sense of our world. And so part of what we're doing is to explore the stories that we're in, and don't stay there. We're going to look at those. We're going to let ourselves be inspired, but what we call pioneers, people that have basically are sitting in your chair, Karen. It's like they've heard the call and they're starting whatever they're doing. Like they're doing something already in business. Learn from there, sit at their feet with great humility, and then say, okay, so what are we as leaders in our individual businesses and also as cohort, this first cohort, what are we going to do collectively to lead ourselves and our businesses a little bit or maybe a lot differently in the face of that perfect crucible of business, consciousness, and sustainability.
Well, and try and get out a little bit of this. We've been calling it cognitive dissonance, right? Where I'm a professor of sustainability. I'm a professor of sustainability. I focus on sustainability in business, sustainability in enterprise, right? I drive a car. I live in a house. When I have to go somewhere, I fly in an airplane. I use money, right? I'm also like 99.9999% typical, say, American, right? So when I drive around, I know a whole bunch of things that are cascading out of my automobile, right? And are problematic. Yet I live in that world too. So how and we all do. And of course, and this isn't actually unusual for human beings. If you've ever been a parent, right? You live in a cognitive dissonance, right? Right? What do I do with this, 13-year-old or whatever? So that's part of this too, is how do we both, yin and yang, hold this cognitive dissonance in our hands, but instead of having it be a source of pain and a source of friction, or maybe not instead of it, while it's a source of pain and a source of friction.
It's the and.
Yeah. How do you also have it and be a source of, engagement and optimism and action? Again, utilizing the assets that you have that you may not have even thought of them that way. These networks of amazing people who will answer your text, right? They're the first ones who text you when you've done, right? How do you use them and help them in the process? So I think this is something, again, I go back to my kids. They're living in cognitive dissonance world that has never existed before, where human beings are having these planetary impacts, the speed of social media, the connectivity. And according, you can tell all of those stories as positives too, right? We have these global impacts, the speed of social media. So I think that this is a big chunk of what we're trying to do is explore with other folks and business leaders, how do we use reality on our side and really lean into it?
Here. I love that ancestral perspective.
Yeah.
Like having kids. Okay, so when I was a kid living in the Netherlands in the 70s and 80s, things were always going to get better. And we had an idea of what that meant, which meant more safety, more material wealth, more achievement, more comfort. more discovery, right? Now, when you're a kid, I don't think all those 5 things are still true. And maybe that's not a problem in some ways. Maybe it's not as big of a problem as I might have thought it was, because I grew up in the generation of always more. Maybe that's a false narrative, because, talking to my friend over here, the professor of sustainability, I'm learning that, hey, the planet's, my consciousness resources may be infinite, right? But the planet's resources are definitely not.
Right,
So
right.
something's not adding up with this always more story. So then another part of this is, from a consciousness development perspective, I can also see this as a blessing, right? I grew up on a dairy farm, and I learned in doing this work that manure and fertilizer is the same thing. It just depends on your perspective. So maybe this challenge that we're in is like a super fertilizer to our awakening.
Absolutely. And I'm thinking of my kids as well. I have 2 who are late 20s and one who's 14. And the way in which I parented, based on the way in which I was parented, right? I grew up 70s, 80s as well, is very different because of not only who I am as I've evolved, but also what's going on in the world around us from when I was, in my late 20s, parenting my 2 little ones, compared to now as I get this kiddo ready to go to high school. The conversation is quite different, actually. Social media, college tuition, career choices, what matters most, in your life around happiness, and what does that mean for you? Like all those things, it's just been very fascinating as I've shifted and changed my life to again, approach business and life and even my role as a parent differently.
Well, and even, I mean, it's funny with my students. I often do. So one of the things we often do is a little exercise on what are your assumptions? And it's actually very difficult for them to become self-reflective and start thinking about their assumptions. And they rarely reach into fundamental things like, well, I wake up every morning and I assume there will be air, like assume there will be water. Oh, good. Today's a good air day, right? No, you might if you live in a city and it's really, really smoggy, right? Or that money, like they just assume money is a thing, right? And then we do an exercise where I have them take out their smartphones and I ask them, what things involved your smartphone that you didn't exist when your parents were a kid? And it's often the first time they're like, oh my gosh, there was like no internet. Like, how could you exist? And then I take this and I go back to like the world we live in. So the physical world we live in, especially like in the United States and other, say, industrialized developed countries with big markets, so Europe and, various Asia and Australia and whatnot, we are surrounded by stuff. And a lot of it's plastic, right? A lot of it's plastic. Well, plastics didn't exist really until right before World War II at any scale. So somehow for X billion years and then X 100,000 years and then X thousands of years of, the planet and humanity, we had a functional world with no plastic. And we didn't have a lot of plastic until the 1960s. So this is another thing. So as human beings, we tend to live in the little time bubble that we exist in, and we just assume that's how it always is, and we kind of assume that's how it always will be. But when we look at just our lives, the transformations that have happened in our lives, right, are stunning, right? And those challenges, and a lot of them have come rolling right back, right? The things we've heard. And so for everybody, as you start to think about it, and you start to realize that they're actually, the great change we've seen, like with COVID and all, it also implies a level of flexibility and a level of change that is likely to happen that should give you actually a lot of optimism.
Yes.
That there's more pathways ahead of us than there are behind us, and there's more pathways ahead of us than we have today. And if you just look out the window, there's one system that's cracked this. So if you look out the window and you look at something like the grass or trees, nature, which exists on a finite planet, has replaced infinite growth, because it can't, with infinite change. Nature puts all the resources in play, but it's constantly evolving new species. It's constantly evolving new ways to use those resources. We're an output of that. So there are these models that, again, we feel like, oh, you have to just grow. Ask a bunch of local business folks who work in a local business community. And their model isn't infinite growth. Their model is increasingly servicing that community by engaging with them and knowing them better and adopting and adapting their services. And we found during I'm part of a big research grant looking at transformative local business models for sustainability. And we found that the businesses that had been working on sustainability issues before COVID had better connectivity with their communities. They were partnered with a lot of other organizations and a lot of community members. And they had already been thinking in terms of these sorts of big global, so they knew even though they were local businesses, they were connected to global systems. And one of the big things they had built up was pools of trust, which just allowed them to be more resilient and whatnot. And so some of this is business 101, like listen to your customers, engage with your community. But it's interesting, none of it orbited around massive growth. It orbited around business success and community success and serving your customer better. And so I think there's a lot of ways we haven't thought of to be business leaders that are all on the table for us.
I just want to come sit in your class.
You know what?
And learn
you know what
and
we
listen.
could do the opposite. Maybe what we'll do is have you come to one of our classes and tell your story. The story you were telling us before about how there's so many stories out there, everybody, of transformation.
Yep.
When you sort of lean into your passion, right? I mean, it's so, yeah.
And I've found, and perhaps you would agree, there's no going back, right? I mean, once you,
yeah, you can't unring the bell.
Right. I'm going to use the word enlightenment, but I'm not pretending like I'm enlightened. I know I have a long way to go. And once you begin a journey around self-discovery and willingness to be that witness and take a look and build community around you, you can't unring the bell. I really like that.
Well, and it's fun. I mean, that's like working with Hylke. Again, this has been it's been hard to bring this into the field of sustainability because the field of sustainability grows a little bit out of fear, right? Like the sky is falling, like environmentalism
and I'll use the word science too, just as a question, right?
Another set of facts,
right? And what you're bringing is it's there, but it's a little deeper reach.
Yes. Maybe more resonant, yes. Maybe a little bit more human language.
Yeah, and I think it's mutually reinforcing.
Yes,
but you sometimes have to point that out.
Yes, but and it's like all of these things are true, and together they're more true, right? So you're saying, yes, of course, there is huge change going on, and part of us should be afraid of that. And that's a healthy response because it helps us to focus, right? And now we can actually use that energy to go back to the purpose of business, which I understand to be about service for the people that work there, for the clients that they serve, for the environment, for the community. And so bring it back to the purpose and get it out of the stories that have created systems that keep it in some kind of stupor that actually doesn't serve anybody, right?
Well, and even the things you're talking about, these emotions we have. So go back in time and imagine you're this little creature and you start to develop the ability to envision the future. You could look at a microbe that is following a trail of sugar, sort of see the beginnings of this. So it's following this trail. So there's its future, and it's working hard. So it's persistent, and it's trying to beat everybody else out. So it's passionate. But this is like a little microbe. Then you reach far and you get to us, right? Imagine you're a creature, and now you live in the present, but you can envision the future. That's actually terrifying. I can now create an infinite number of futures, and my number one thing is I don't want to die. Right? That's bad. So I start creating all these futures where in the future, I'm trying to avoid dying. So my future visions are full of fear. Well, it's going to stop me in my tracks. I'm going to literally lock myself up. But humans don't do that, right? So what do? We have these emotional tools like passion and purpose and permission for other people and persistence. Apparently all the emotions start with P. Who knew? And these are vehicles for us to envision futures that are scary and futures that are fun and head towards them. And again, this is something that's been missing from the field of sustainability. So the scientists IPCC sent out a report. It's awesome. It's great science. We should look at it. But like in the movie Don't Look Up or whatever, you want to look away, right? If I just come in, it becomes a battering ram, right? Whereas if we're talking about what Hylke's talking about, right? Which is like, how do we bring passion and purpose back into this? Those are human highways.
Yeah. And the other thing I'd like to add, and I love that we're sitting around the table here, right? To me, a lot of this is about courageous connectedness. It's like helping us to all sit around the table, one table. My husband is African American, right? And I'm learning so much sitting on the table with him, at the table with him. I know a little bit of consciousness, but it's just like a tiny little fragment. You know something about that, and I'm looking forward to learning more. And you know something about sustainability, and Daryl knows about a lot of other things that I don't know about. And then there's the business person. And so part of this course is saying, okay, let's practice humility.
Mm-hmm.
Let's sit together and say we have a challenge that we actually do not know the answer to, which our little human brain does not like.
I'm so glad you said that, because I was going to mention that, right? Our brain is not designed to want those things.
Right.
Yeah, we're not designed for sustainability. I'm good at getting out of the rain. I have literally no physiology to understand how my purchase of a car impacts the global climate. Like, I'm not built for that. We've built organizations that can sense it.
Right. And we as communities can hold it.
Right.
Look at what's happening in Ukraine. Like, it's not that one person stands in front of a tank. It's a whole village. And then one person, and then two, and then three, etc. And it together. So it's the same thing with climate change. When we start to sit around the table and really listen to each other, the business person, the scientist, the government person, the consciousness person, the priest, whoever.
Yep.
And we ask ourselves the question from the highest consciousness available to us right now with great humility, because it may not be very much. What are we going to do? And then let the answer come to us and be willing to say that we completely failed, but at least we tried, we took a stand.
Right. Very much freeing. Like, you don't have to know. You don't have to get it right.
Knowing is the booby prize.
Yeah. Over at the School of Sustainability, right, over at ASU, we've got the Global Futures Laboratory. We're calling ourselves to the carpet. Like, we're a business, and you can, all the businesses that are out there that are, say, creating awesome stuff, but also creating these big sustainability challenges, because they're built on an older model that doesn't, again, they're all full of amazing humans, right? Well, we trained them all, right? We trained them all. So, okay, so all the business models, all the business thinkers, all the business leaders, all the things we're talking about, well, we trained them all. So where are the universities that are developing and supporting the next generation? Where are the universities that are, for the planet and people and planet? And again, somebody like Hylke, right? It's a challenge to our organizations. How do we break down our silos, right? How do we really help a class of students who are just hungry, right, for pathways? One of the biggest things with businesses today in terms of sustainability is, if you want to hire the people coming out of universities and younger professionals, you better have a plan for how you're part of a positive future,
yes.
Right? I mean, they're like, you're not giving me security, right? You guys, you adults don't seem to have this all figured out, right?
You want me 60 hours a week.
You want me to bust my hump, right? So why?
Yes. It's got to be in alignment with my consciousness.
Why?
And my purpose.
Yeah. And you know what? And when you face that, so Hylke has a really good journey map, like the phases we go through. And in the course, we go over that, and we actually use it as a tool. And it's very relevant. Like, again, he started out the talk today where you immediately want to go like, oh, I can't do anything, or, oh, I'm going to go, I'm super person, I'm going to save the planet, right? This journey, one of the big parts to it is actually being aligned with reality, like holding that and not shying away from it. And that's so empowering, right? I mean, and business people are good at this, because one of the disciplines of business is taking what the market gives you. right? One of the disciplines of business is saying, I want to do this. I thought that, right? I was going to invent a better mousetrap, but nobody they didn't beat the path to my door. So business people actually have a strong professional discipline of being willing to listen to how the world really works and then work with that. It can get in their way too, if you listen to, if you don't have a big enough picture, but it's very exciting.
So to me, business is a great spiritual practice, and spiritual practice is a great business. It's both, right? Because this is the first time I'm using the word spiritual, because I don't like that word, because it has so much baggage. Just like business has so much baggage. That's why I don't like that word either. But we are living in these systems where the two don't meet until we consciously put our effort to them meeting, right? So that we're saying, okay, yeah, I have a business to run. I want to attract the best people possible. I want to make sure that I serve people in the best possible way, and the climate's changing. Okay, so what do? Do I follow my instant thought that comes from conditioning about
and quite possibly panic and fear?
Panic and fear.
Run away.
No,
out.
Or do I take a step back and say, what kind of business do I want to be? What kind of business leader do I want to be? Maybe I'll be a pioneer with a lot of humility, a humble pioneer. Maybe I'll be a business that becomes an ancestral community builder for this new way of operating with each other. And that can be working in a big company like Microsoft or Google, or it can be working on in the dry cleaner in your neighborhood. It doesn't matter where you are, because we all are in that same place, I think.
And I think we are very fortunate to be here in Arizona, where our higher education, our K-8 educators, our businesses, enterprisers, nonprofits, coaches and consultants, we are having these conversations. We hear it every day, in and out, whether it's Arizona Technology Council, Steve Zalser and I talking to someone from biomedicine or aerospace, to, again, the smaller business owners. I'm thrilled and I'm reassured on a regular basis that we are moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we have a lot of work to do.
Of course.
We have a lot of work to do. We have some. There is a strong sense of personal responsibility here that I think really can be rewarded in this. There's amazing things coming on with the sort of new Arizona economy. And we have these strong pieces here. I mean, we have agriculture, we have manufacturing, we have smart materials, we have local economy. So to your point, I mean, there's a reason ASU is doing what it's doing. I mean, there really is this incubator here. The opportunity that is presenting itself is something that, the purpose of the course is something that individuals and their groups, I think, can make a big difference, right? I mean, I think it's that kind of state, like the bottom of the hockey stick type of thing, where, little actions can have big results.
And you're helping people see it through that lens, seeing how they contribute, how they show up, how they lead through that lens. So again, it just begins, of course, to radiate out, right? I mean, that's the work that you're doing. How do we build on this then? So we're almost at the end of the hour, which I promised you it goes super, super fast. How can we encourage, one, leaders to get involved, and what does involvement look like? And then how do we build on this sense that we are already feeling, at least, here in Arizona, that we have more work to do, but we're also, we're moving in the right direction. So kind of two different questions, but would open it up to either one of you.
The first thing I'd say is, whether you ever listen to this podcast or go to this course, Conscious Leadership course at Arizona State University or not, to me, the most important thing from this conversation is that everyone walks away with this question and with this increase, like, when I come from my highest consciousness, how do I choose to respond to what I see in front of me? And sit with that question, almost like a prayer or a contemplation, and let it take you somewhere. And it may take you to a conversation with somebody. It may take you to talk about it with your family, with your friends, with your colleagues. Or it may take you to a course like the course that we'll be hosting at the end of May, the Climate Conscious Leader course at ASU.
Is that for ASU students only?
Oh no, this is actually, it's kind of not for ASU students. So it's actually
Very important point.
Yeah. No, I have seen unbelievable efforts by our mid-career professional people who either get degrees or take certificates, courses like this. It has been one of the greatest things you do as a teacher is you give an assignment and the students come back with their assignment, their work, and it has nothing to do with but you look at it and you go like, all right, this is like 1,000,000 times better than I ever dreamed, right? I have seen this over and over again where, to Hylke's point, when you give people a chance to sit in this space and get some information and get some support, we've had graduates go off and transform their businesses. We've had graduates go off and change careers. We've had graduates go find resources they couldn't find. We've had graduates do the same thing they're doing, but doing it in this way that makes them feel so much more empowered. So I think that reaching the mid-career audience, one way or another, is like literally, it's the most important thing we do. And the fun thing about sustainability and the fun thing about consciousness is, you know what? You get better as you get older. You get better as you have more life experiences. This is not something you have to be great at by the time you're 21.
And you're likely not.
And you're likely not, right? You're likely not. But
good on you. Yep.
Yeah, you bring your own. So anyway, I think and the course is built actually for professionals, people out there doing things.
So the cohort this first one is full, or do you still have room for more?
We still have room. And the requirements for participation are very simple. A, you're willing. B, you are engaged in some kind of work, whether it's professional, whether it's in a business or nonprofit, doesn't matter. You're engaged in some kind of work. And your work could be, I'm taking care of my kids and I need to know how I'm going to be a climate conscious leader at home. It doesn't matter. And then the third prerequisite is that you just sign up. Very simple.
And there's a fee?
Yeah.
There's a fee. I'm never good at that.
It's okay. It's just important for us to make sure that we...
I think the fee is around $1,800. I may be off by a little bit.
Very reasonable. Yeah, especially based on the conversation we had around the potential and the opportunity to really not just change the trajectory of where you're going, but really be a beacon of light for so many other people in addition to our business community.
Yeah. Well, and I always make the point, the best thing to invest in is yourself.
Hands down.
Yeah. Right.
Yep. Yes, good. How can people find out more about the course itself? Where do they go?
They go to the ASU website, the School of Sustainability. There's a link there. If you go and look online and Google Climate Conscious Leader ASU, you'll find the link and there will be a sign-up page for you.
Great. And how do we stay in touch with both of you? We often say, share an email address or LinkedIn or your website. What makes the most sense? And are you open to someone who's listening today that just wants to reach out and say, I heard you on Business RadioX, and here's what I'm dealing with?
I absolutely. I was going to say absolutely not. No, I'm all about disconnecting. I'm going to go back to my little cave.
Boo, hiss.
Yeah, disregard the last hour.
No. I think the easiest way, I'd love to hear from you. The easiest way to connect with me is to find me on LinkedIn.
Perfect.
And you'll find, it's Hylke Faber on LinkedIn, or just look for the book Taming Your Crocodiles on Amazon. Taming Your Crocodiles on Amazon. You'll find me in the spelling of my name and everything. So Taming Your Crocodiles.
And we'll have it in the show notes once this is published as a podcast. We'll have that available
and
as well.
You can find me on, I'm happy to speak to people, do all the time.
Yes.
And you can find me on LinkedIn too with my name. And then it's great. You can find me through the School of Sustainability. You can go to ASU, School of Sustainability, type my name in.
And there you
but
are.
Also, it's worth checking out. It's worth checking out ASU. It's worth checking out the school. There's lots of great stuff going on around the world, and this is one of those places.
I agree. ASU really is the School of Innovation and School of Community, too. I'm failing to remember who we had on just recently with ASU. Who was it? Nexus? Yeah. Yes. So
Somebody named Nexus. That's an impressive brand.
no, just again, this community outreach that ASU continues to give. It's not just around getting degreed people through the doors, whether it's undergrad or
Right.
graduate. It's let's open this up to our community.
It's about inclusion.
It is. It's inclusion.
It's not a school of exclusion. It's a school of inclusion,
Agreed.
and that really transforms everything.
Yes. Agreed.
Yeah.
This has truly been a pleasure. I have no doubt that we'll have many more conversations. I would love to come and be part of what you're doing. Look very much forward to that. You've been listening to Phoenix Business Radio, broadcasting from the Max 6 Entrepreneurial Center right here in Tempe, Arizona. Some media leans left, some lean right, and we lean business. Until next time, I'm Karen Nowicki. Thank you for listening.